we'd been with the same ERP system for 20 years. Being in the industry that we're in, quite complex, I guess, for an ERP system, we'd stuck with the system we were at for as long as we could because we were very aware of what a big change going with a new ERP system was going to be and getting that right, how hard that was going to be. So we probably, we pushed the envelope with the system we had, modifying it over the years to suit the business. And to be honest, it did quite a good job, but towards the end, started to get a bit clunky. There's got to be a better way and time to bite the bullet. We're in an area of growth where we could sort of put all our energies into that, choosing a new ERP.
Considering the level of complexity in this one here, because this was not only the accounting ERP but also the manufacturing that is talking to sort of a machine language and going through and interfacing everything, it was important that we did not rely only on the internal resources to do a selection. It was very important to go to someone and use a person like yourself to be able to understand the market and understand what each of the players were and basically things that we were not exposed to, so that your experience helped us in that. At GCI, the experience that the employees or the senior management had was ERP implementations were non-existent because they had never gone through such a process. They had been using a system for the last 20 odd years, and that was the only system they knew.
A major one, I guess, we had some changes throughout the business as far as we kept growing. We had growth on top of growth on top of growth. We were traveling really well. We had some changes in ownership, and with that came a more corporate structure, and hence more reporting was required. That was probably one of the biggest catalysts for us. Our system we'd modified to a point for production purposes and running the business that was a bit clunky, but worked really well, really fitted into our business. But getting reporting out of it was just way too hard. We'd exhausted all opportunities to get the reporting we needed from it to satisfy the board and to also give us clarity in decision making as we got bigger and moved into bigger decisions to make. We looked at people we could engage, and we engaged with a company we already had a relationship with, and more on the on our IT side of things. But they sort of they indicated that they'd done this before and that they could do a good job at it. So we went for the first step. We engaged them for the first step, and then what we found, they came into our business, mapped our processes, and sort of came back with areas we could save money, areas we could gain. Anyway, when we started to look at this data, we could see that they didn't quite grasp our business as well as they thought they had. We took a step back and thought, right, there's got to be someone better to guide us through this. So we went out to market. You were one of the people that we sort of engaged with initial talks. We've gotten some good feedback about your processes. And so we had 3 companies that we spoke to. And then after speaking with yourself and the other companies, we came with a decision that, hey, we really believe that you're going to be the one to help us guide us through this process better than anyone.
The reason we started looking, I think Anthony and Nathan went to one of the industry expos down in Sydney or Melbourne, got talking to on the stand, and they were obviously, we was aware that ITMS had a shelf life, and Nathan in particular was quite keen to move that forward. They had some dialogue with it. I think we even had a couple of online meetings with them, but quite quickly we realised that this is a big thing, and there's a big sort of scope involved, and our skill set really wasn't there to manage that whole thing. So we then looked, I believe, online to find a suitable consultant that could guide us through the process. So they found you were local, the background knowledge was there, and yeah, bloody nice guy as well. So someone one of those things that, you know, you've preached from day one around our selection process. One for you as well is finding someone that's the right fit, you know, that fits in with the culture and someone that you can work with well, which, you know, you generally have been. So that was the sort of background, I think, of where we got to using you.
It blew me away even more so when we sort of started the journey with yourself, but even from day one, just when we spoke about our processes, systems, we could see that you just got it straight away. No problem whatsoever. You've seen all this before. Also, the way you spoke about different ERP vendors and products, it just all fell into place for us when we spoke to you about, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about here. And we really felt that as big a decision as this was for our business, the biggest, you know, decision we could make at that time, we were just really comfortable to have you steer the ship for us.
Be involved to do like a scoping process. There was an initial scoping process to pre-ERP selection. They're our external IT provider, company. They did a piece of work, and Gail, who was there at that time, was involved with that cost us X amount of money. And when they sort of delivered it, it was almost like a business case, similar to the business case that where they went through, picked a couple of key areas. One was purchasing, and they sort of said, oh, if you go down this road, I think, you know, you can save X amount of $1 million through streamlining your purchasing thing. And it was I don't know, it wasn't very convincing. You know, out of all the things that they highlighted, wasn't really kind of, you know, they missed sales, they missed estimating, but we'd had that whole conversation with them, and it really highlighted that they were good in the IT space, but not in the ERP space. And that's sort of, after that, we reached out to or explored the other options that were more ERP specific. And that was like first phase, and there was a next phase that was going to cost X amount as well. It was like, but we didn't see value in what they'd done already. Yeah. So that's sort of the background of where we got.
In your case, it was that I knew that what I was getting is from you, not from like a team, or I'm going to a company and they'll say whoever. And it was those questions that I asked because I'm very detailed but to the point. So that's the bit that, you know, works for me. And I was looking for similar thing, that I can work with a consultant that is answering my question but to the point, not telling me everything around the point. So I'm very focused in that, because when the ERP selection process comes to the crunch, it's those things that matter. And I want somebody who's a bit independent and can tell me exactly how that person sees the point. Doesn't want to sugarcoat it for me.
You've got to, as I said, we were aware of what a big process this was and an important decision. Yeah, and you've really got to get yourself ready for, there's days to do this properly. There's days and days of going through with the different vendors and the different products, understanding them, meeting with them, and really, you know, by the third or fourth vendor, if you're doing this properly, it's getting a bit tiresome. But in saying that, having yourself there to drive that, to keep pushing, you only got to do this once, guys, so just keep going, was a big thing. Like that's, and it's so important, because it's, if left to your own devices, it'd be pretty easy to go, oh look, yeah, we'll go with these guys, or do we really need to be doing this? You know, it would be easy to do that because it is such a big process. You've really got to create a team of people within your business that are going to drive this, backfill their roles whilst they're working on this. There is time out of the business, but you're not going to make a bigger decision for your business, are you? So yeah, having yourself there to drive that and really keep some structure to it and keep everyone accountable, is worth its weight in gold.
No, really good. I mean, it's quite ironic, really, that from the very beginnings where they spoke to her on a stand, that we've come full circle and ended up using it, but not directly. And I think that would have been a mistake. But that whole process of really aligning what our expectations were to what was available in the industry, and some of the key points around what we need to do as a company to do it right from day one was where the real value's been, I think, around focusing on the right vendors, not just the product, focusing on the in-house capabilities, a dedicated team, which was, from day one, and from your book, which we all read at the early days, that was a key number one thing: get your team right. It's been there from day one, but it's been reinforced so many times again and again through the vendors, through the customers of the vendors that we visited. That was like a common theme. Just backing that part up. So, and I think that just reinforced that we made the right decision to get a consultant in to really push home that we need to do this right. We realised that we didn't have that skill set in-house to manage that process.
I had a person to go to who had that knowledge, the skill set, plus knew what was available in the market. I do remember coming to you and asking you about a couple of softwares that I've used in the past, and it was very clear that you actually hit the right points in saying, and that was my view of those softwares. But I just wanted to double check whether what your views were, so that we were aligned. And that was to the point, because there was no sugarcoating, as I said. It was to the point and very practical, because you do understand what the gaps are at GCI and who has what sort of skills to be able to go through this process. And also you did take a bit of understanding as to what the GCI culture is, what are the guys driven with, so we can be lined up with a support partner or vendor which has similar values, rather than going to the big end of town where it's just a number. It has to be something that works not for the implementation phase, but the support after.
Getting a good understanding of how big a decision this is, and the task you are undertaking. Don't half-ass it, basically. Select the people within your business that have a really good understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve, and the people that are committed to your business, people that are going to be there for the not just the selection process, but the implementation as well. Make sure they're on board, they understand the importance of this. It's going to offer some really good opportunity for some people in your business as well to, whilst it's going to be a tough task, it's going to also give them the opportunity to really grow in their roles and their importance to the business. There's some key factors there for not just yourself running the business, but also your staff that are involved in it.
You say it how it is. What you're offering is what you're offering. You bring it black and white to the vendors. They're left in no uncertain terms what they're accountable for and what's expected of them. But you also guiding us through the process. In an area that we would have probably got lost in and not necessarily come out with the right outcome. So that I think, using your years of experience in the ERP world is invaluable for us.
I think I would suggest that I engage your services. It's one of those things, because in any business there is not that skill set. None of the businesses carry such a resource. Some businesses do have business improvement people, but it is not ERP specific. And it is very important for businesses to be able to have someone who has that experience, is specialized in that area, and also has the ability to understand what the market is. Because even if you are an IT manager, you do not know there is a lot of providers out there. So you need to understand who the provider is, plus what the software offering is. So those things, and plus yourself being in that market, you do understand that market and you're up to date with that. And plus, I think the other bit that I really enjoyed was that you had good relationships with everyone that we sort of was on that list. I think we had a list of 16 vendors. So that's quite an extensive list. And those relationships is important for us, You do know those people a little bit more than what like we knew. So you could tell us actually what their strengths were, where their their shortfalls could be in terms of how that could interact with the GCI business. To be able to select an internal resource which is like the project sponsor from Taiwan, and that's very important. I think that at GCI was never done, because that person is and that person has to be one who has a bit of knowledge about this process.
Yeah, the independent part of engaging yourself really, well, I guess what you bring to the table is what someone running a business and people within a business don't have, is that understanding of how these vendors work, what their tricks are, what their sales pitches are. It can be easy to fall for that or not interrogate that enough. Engaging someone like yourself, or especially yourself, with such experience in this process, that's not going to get through to the keeper. You're gonna catch things out. You're going to interrogate, give an insight that we're not going to have, because we're not operating with these systems day in, day out.
There was definitely no views that there was any conflict in that space around knowledge, and some of the guys you knew really, really well didn't get very far in the process. There was some, I think was one, the Scandinavian guy, big history, but he's obviously had some serious dealings with him in the past, but that didn't get him, it maybe got him an opportunity to showcase their business, but it didn't mean they were the right ones at the end of the day. So I think there was definitely no question that independence is there from your side of things, and we're drawing on your knowledge and your personal relationships, that these guys are genuine, and they're players that could work with us. I think your personal relationships or previous history is the benefits there in that space, not from pointing us in any direction that benefits anyone other than ourselves.
Independence was quite adamant, because you let us ask all those questions directly, and you let us make up our mind. It was like you were not trying to help us score those responses. The scoring was independently done by us, and basically at the end of each sessions, you welcomed everyone to speak their minds. And that was important, because people had different perspectives. And at the end of the day, it's the 8 guys in that room that make that decision, and that was very important. I think the scoring sheets were very important, and considering they were done independently was the best thing. And one of the other points was, during those presentations or even the demo sessions, you let us manage. From time to time, when you needed to step in, you stepped in, which was important, because you let it go for us to go through that and then step in and ask those open-ended questions.
That's incredibly valuable, because the fact that you're going to be asking the questions, and and you're there looking for the responses, where we might get a response that, for myself and our team, that might satisfy what we think, we're looking for as an answer. But it might be an answer that's given that you've got aha, and you can nail down on that and really ask some accountable questions to see if you get the right responses following up to that too. Another advantage, big advantage also, is with engaging yourself, is the initial, who do we contact? You look out there, there's ERP systems everywhere. What are the right ones for our industry? There's companies that we deal with in our industry that we know what systems they're using. So therefore they're the ones you go to straight away, I guess, because you think they're already in the industry, they might be the ones. But they mightn't be using the right systems. Whereas having yourself with such a broad knowledge of all the systems and the vendors, I mean, you can't stress the importance of the vendors. I mean, we had a couple of different vendors selling the same product, but they were light years apart as to which one you would go with. Even just the answering of the questions just highlighted way steer clear of that vendor, but that may have meant steer clear of that product. But because you had a couple of same product, different vendors, we were able to see that no, hey, that might be the right product still, because this vendor's all over it and is really invested in giving the right product. You don't really think of that when you think people selling a product know their product. That's what you would think that anyway. Especially someone who's not all over IT and understands it that well. For me, it was a real eye opener.
The benefit there is we're using your experience to hold these guys accountable and asking the questions that we as a team necessarily wouldn't have asked or thought of. But you've brought, from your years of experience, you've brought to the table, and you're asking those probing questions that keep them honest and keep them on their toes that we would have probably glossed over, missed, not even thought about. And I think that got us to a better ending, having all that, the kahunas, so to speak, to bring some of this stuff to the table.
Oh, that definitely is very useful, because the team are very particular about their areas of focus. They're very concerned as to what the current system provides them, and that's the way of thinking they have. And having yourself asking those open-ended questions and just from time to time, putting those comments in or additional, questions in there, that really challenges what these guys thinking is. And I think that was important, because as we started in the initial phases, I think the first couple that we did, we were trying to figure out how this whole process works when we're going through, for those vendors or providers to do those 3 or 4 hour sessions where they sort of try to give us a bit of a spill. I think the first ones were a bit clunky, because it was more like we were getting used to the process. And do remember, we had 8 of us in the room. So it was, people with different experiences, different viewpoints, and some people are not used to such processes. I think any ERP, you need to have the person who is practical, approachable, quite detailed, and is knowledgeable. I think that's the key. Knowledgeable experience is very important. And I think your relationships with the vendors were pretty good. And I think the vendors were thankful about that also.
Well, I think we went out to a broader range of potential suppliers, vendors, than we would have done ourselves. Really probably honed in what we needed to ask them as well. And probably saved us a lot of time of dealing with them individually, to group them together, send out the common pack with a common timeline. Even though that we called it Hell Week here, where we did 4 a day for 5 days roughly, but it concentrated the efforts into blocks of time that it might have been tough, but got it over and done with, and then we moved on to the next stage. So we probably wouldn't have managed that ourselves like that. We'd have just gone piece by piece, and not to so many vendors, but by having more vendors, you're getting more options and more confidence you're making the right decision, that we're not leaving someone on the table that should have been in there, which may have been the case.
Because I have gone through a couple of ERP change implementations, and none of the other guys had gone through. It was good to have somebody in the room that could really sort of not side with me, but support my thinking, where I've told these guys that ERP is not an easy process. You have to be prepared. And plus, it was important for everyone to listen to someone who's got that knowledge and experience, and who sort of can ask, especially those vendors, those early questions, just to the point, and then making them aware that yes, there is an issue there. Let's go back and go through that particular subject matter or whatever. Those questions that you came up with. In the outside, in the high 90s, that was all you with a bit of review from the senior managers here. But I think they only did the review rather than come up with those questions. And I think also to be able to present it in a way that the providers do understand what our requirements are. If we had to do that document, it would be a completely different document because we wouldn't go into that detail to start the process. Most of the vendors, when they came across, they actually were very thankful that they had such a document. They did thank yourself and us for getting that in that detailed format.
The level of comfort that we had with yourself with such a big decision came, after our first meeting, pretty easy. Seeing how well you understood our business, our processes, and the I mentioned before about committing a team to this, backfilling those positions. I mean, that advice came from yourself and was sort of drummed into us from day one. But it was it's really needed. Get it from day one, right? We've got to build this team. So you start that thinking process and then you don't start cutting corners later. You've got that drilled into you, and you came pretty heavy with that. And that's something that, if you're going to take on this process, you've got to embrace that. This guy knows what he's talking about. I'm listening to Dave. He's done this before. It's not his first rodeo. Let's take this advice. We're invested here, so let's give it our best shot.
It's almost that statement that we got off the when we did the business analysis. It was can you afford not to involve David in the project, because the risk to the business, not just financially, but time, and if it doesn't go right, and that fact of whatever percent of ERP implementations don't go to plan, don't go to budget, or are not successful to that level is huge. So to maximize your chances of getting it right, that we need, I think we've nailed that by involving you.
Had you not been there for that, I'd hate to think what would have happened to the project. It's fallen by the wayside, but you there steering it has managed to get the best outcome. It was great working with you, Dave.
Yeah, definitely. I think the whole sort of, as a project, managing the projects through yourself, there's a kind of a mirror effect there of things we've learned along the way. If we was to do something similar or whatever, that sort of whole vendor assessment process, putting things in writing, and plan it properly. I think there's definitely some lessons there that might not be ERP specific going forward, but there's just some project planning and project management, whether it's ERP or another process of a project within the business. Is like, if you're going to do something, do it seriously. You've got to have that dedicated team. You've got to have the resources and the backing of the board. And part of, I know Doug's been involved more so towards the end, but if he hadn't, that presentation of the board would have been even more critical. It was less critical because he had a bigger insight being involved as he was. But if it had been how it started, where he was only really going to come in at the end on a board approval presentation, there would, that having that in place and having you guide us on that would have, was invaluable as well. Well, we found out firsthand that we do need to be dedicated, and having you run this process from start to finish kept us accountable as well, kept us on track, because we, as a business, get very lost in the day-to-day and what have you. But having that agenda, having you as the project manager to run this process, kept it on track, for sure. I mean, I think it just reinforces that certain, as good as we are as a business, we don't know everything, and there's certain areas of the business where particularly new things come along that you need to reach out and get expert advice. So obviously one of the other things next stage is in terms of negotiations, not just the negotiation piece, but getting a relevant lawyer involved, not just our go-to lawyer, but someone with ERP lawyer experience, contract experience to help in that process. Would we have done that? Well, we'd have probably got a lawyer involved, but it would have been one of our existing contacts, not someone from the industry.
Yes.
Again, that you've got previous knowledge of that can do a good job. There was definitely some that underperformed in a big way, which was particularly from a sales perspective, being in sales myself, like how some of those guys pitched, in particular was like, unbelievable that they would go there. But even some of the others, were that you thought were potentially strong contenders. The guys, I think they came in thinking it was a done deal because they'd already worked with another company that we knew very well, and I think they rested on those laurels too much, and there was a lot of gaps in what they were offering. And even some of the bigger ones, like the third one that we actually went to demo on, that just felt, they were really good guys. They really knew their stuff. Really, those sort of exploration days that we had with him really delved in deep and seemed to get it, knowledgeable. But like on demo day, just sort of bombed, which was quite a surprise. One of the big learnings was when you ask questions of can the system do this, it's not just yes, okay, it's yes, prove it. That validation. Would we have been as forceful in that with that sort of statement? Probably not. We'd have gone, oh yeah, they can do this, they can do that. But that element of doing the demo and can it do this and scheduling, can it do that? Yes, it can. Okay, here's the proof it can. Is a big thing, and probably we wouldn't have had the experience to have maybe asked that or pushed that as hard as it was pushed. Having you in the room, you feel like you're one of GCI, you're one of the team. You're not just there sitting on the outside looking in and guiding. You're actually, you've integrated well with the team, with the members, and as part of a committee viewing a vendor, viewing a package, you're sort of representing GCI. You're not representing. You are obviously representing yourself, but you're coming across as one of the GCI. You got your head into what we do and what we needed really quickly, and it felt like you were part of our selection team approaching these vendors. Culture is really important here. A cultural fit for everyone, whether it's internal or external, is really important, and you definitely tick that box.
And I think the cultural fit also assists where there is gaps in the skills of the team, because if you do not have that fit, then everything can blow up in arguments and disagreements that can really harm the project, both in terms of cost, timing, and plus maybe the success of it.
Going through that process as a team for every level without knowing what the price was. You knew that the price is overall for all those options was within a roundabout budget that you thought would suit GCI, but not knowing that and making decisions on the important things around functionality, fit, all that sort of thing, and then comparing the price at the end. I think we'd definitely be swayed by price if we knew all the prices up front. So that tactic is gold.
And that's one of the key things, I think, for you to come across into the business, assess it, have those one-on-one interviews with all the staff, all the people who are using the system. I think that's a very important step. Because if you came across and only spoke to the senior managers, like some of the nitty-gritty day-to-day routine tasks, sort of I wouldn't understand. Like my team may be doing it, but I only see the end product, not how to get there, Unless there is an issue, then I step in. But, those things is important. And for you to be able to do that, that requirements document those questions, most like I think 95% you formulated it. It's important to have all the areas of the business covered, because the thing is, all the areas of the business, they do not operate in silos, and for you to be there, you could, because you have gone through, and remember you had those one-on-one interviews with almost all the staff, and those things, because you would be aware as to what that particular staff, if that staff's not even in the room, but that staff has told you something, it may be one of my staff, and then I'm thinking, okay, is that a misunderstanding on your part, or is it a misunderstanding on my part, or whether the staff has got it completely wrong, or something that I wasn't aware of. It was a good way to check where we're sitting, especially those ones, because with any system, people get used to the way they operate the system, and how someone operates that system could be slightly different to how I operate the system, or as to how I see. My views are different to someone else's. Yes, I did expect that, because you do have some of those, like the Microsoft sort of products that do have a good name in the market, but they are not fit for what we are looking for. And it was very important for us to go through that process to be able to make up our own minds, but obviously with a bit of support, or a bit of guidance from yourself, so that our thinking is aligned. Because do remember, there was 8 of us. So if we do not have somebody to align all that thinking, it's very hard to, it's not hard, but it is a bit of a challenge. Because the thing is, you can't have it done lightly up front, because then if you don't do it up front, then you'll suffer the pain later on, or you may have gaps. The other bit was, I think from GCI side, it was all about commitment from us in terms of putting the time and effort in, and making sure the right people were there. I think any ERP is a challenging process. It is a big challenge, and it is one of those things that people need to understand from day one. It's not only once it goes live that is challenging. It is, right from basically when you are thinking of changing. I do remember, that your book around the issues that management or senior staff or IT staff go through. They hit those points directly, and it is very important to go through those points and take a step back before you go into such a project. Just think about those things, because such a ERP project can range up from anywhere between 9 months up to sort of 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's a very, time-consuming, long, costly exercise. Oh yeah, definitely, because then it's basically a summarized version of something you can read in 200 pages and still not get it. It's a very detailed book, but to the point, and it's very easy reading, and it has a lot of to the point. Straight shooting. I think it's important that those points are taken on board. I think all demonstrations give you value. The ones that do not perform also allows you to see what you didn't go forward with. Maybe if we didn't go through this process and we picked that vendor and that software, we could have ended up with that person without going through this process, because obviously if you have got a preconceived idea about that software, you might go there. But going through this process really explained to us that it is not a sales pitch. Like I really like is when we do go with the ERP, we try to implement the software as is without mods, because that's the big one that I'm used to in one of the implementations we did. We actually implemented it, and then straight away we started doing more.
Yes.
And I'm aware that that particular business hasn't been able to do any major upgrades since then. You can listen to views of other customers who have gone through this process, and also gives you a bit of this perspective in terms of what the challenges are and what your commitment should be. And that's the two bits that I really saw with those couple that I went to, because they were very particular about having a team, having a sort of committed time, and also that once the system goes live, you never get out of that project. You have to be in there, and it keeps on rolling. The experience is from a user point of view, which is very important, and having to talk to those guys and ask those questions. Like one of the ones I went to, they got us to meet, I think from memory, about 6 to 8 of them. So it was a huge team. They were well prepared, and each of the areas were represented from their side. So it was very, like to the point, to the detail that we were looking for.